Well, I'm all by myself here on TexAgs Rewind because the McKinney Brothers just left with Billy Liucci. We had a great show today. You don't want to miss the replay of that one, especially here. Start off with the rewind, then go back and watch it all. So we did the final countdown as expected. Billy also gave us his preview on App State and why this game is an intriguing game for many reasons. I still think the defense is going to be too much for App State. We had Caroline Fenton there from 102.5 The Game there in Nashville. She breaks down the entire SEC, has some good thoughts also on what happened with Brian Kelly and LSU. And we had OB, as we always do, 3 things he wants to see. I gave you 3 things I want to see. I got nothing funny to say, so just go straight to the video. OB, it's now time for 3 things that we want to see.
In the game.
In the game or in life. I can see.
Okay. I want to see the offensive line run block at a outstanding rate.
We're on the same page for the first one, yeah.
I want to see Haynes King throw at least 3 touchdown passes and hopefully no interception, but no more than 1.
Yep.
And I want to see that pass rush get show that last week wasn't just a matter of playing. Sam, I want to see him get all over and get at least 5 sacks. I think 5 sacks after what I saw last week is a legitimate goal, especially if you're going at a quarterback that's not
as mobile. Yep. Look, we had questions about the defensive line coming into it, not about the talent, but the questions coming into the Sam game were, well, you lost a lot of guys to the NFL. How's this pass rush going to look this year? Test number 1, we came away very happy, right?
Very impressed.
Several more tests to come, but at least that one is one you take off the list, like not as concerned as you may have been, especially how good Fidel Diggs looked and everybody. Shamar Turner, E.N.I. White.
Shamar Stewart.
Holy
moly,
yeah.
Shamar Stewart.
All of them. Anthony Lucas.
That Olin Buchanan guy at linebacker.
And you kind of insinuate, or didn't insinuate, you said, hey, this dials up the pressure right off the bat. For Brian Kelly and LSU tomorrow night. They didn't answer the bell. How impressed were you, though, with Napier and the Gators?
To be completely honest with you, I thought Florida was going to be like a 6-6 team this year.
Same.
I thought Billy Napier was going to need a little bit of time because going from the Sun Belt to the SEC, I mean, the competition cranks up really, really quickly. And I know it's just 1 week, but it was also a top 10 Utah team that I predicted preseason to go to the college football playoff, and Florida balled out.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson looks like an early Heisman candidate. I mean, I think Anthony Richardson is what I expected Jaden Daniels to look like Sunday night.
Yeah.
I think the way that Billy Napier coached and how good that team looked, and also the clock management of Billy Napier late in that game, he let the clock run out before calling timeout. I mean, Billy Napier is a very smart coach, and everything I saw from Florida is what I wanted to see from LSU. And I tweeted that out for 2 reasons. But one, because you look at Billy Napier and Brian Kelly being the 2 new coaches in the SEC. So a new coach gets a win against a top 10 team, then Brian Kelly has to answer. And also it's twofold in the state of Louisiana, because I think a lot of LSU fans, honestly, myself included, looked at Billy Napier like, oh, we're just going to go out and hire LSU's little brother's head coach. Like, we can do better than that.
Yeah.
And so for Billy Napier to go to Florida and beat a top 10 Utah team, and LSU, signed Brian Kelly to this massive $100 million contract, and they weren't able to deliver on the biggest stage that weekend, that's embarrassing, to be honest. It was embarrassing.
That seems like
Carolina did.
Yeah.
Carolina went for over 250 or close to it. Carolina went for 580 total and 60-something points. And here's the thing, though. One of the other things about they need to run the ball, first of all. You need to get A-Chain going. I think if you don't get him going this week, it's hard to sit there and say, yeah, I'm not saying he could not get going this week and go have 120 yards each game against Miami, Arkansas, Mississippi State, but that would be because of some dramatic turnaround. And maybe that would be Bryce Foster in another game getting in there. But the reality is, and I heard you guys talking, I think Bryce will be back sooner than later, but then again, what you have to remember is he hasn't practiced hardly, and he's not practicing with money, hasn't practiced hardly at all. But there's opportunity there for that O-line to get better by experience. And I don't mean Billy, what's the difference between one game and 3? No, I mean guys just having played now and the nerves go away.
Yeah.
And they can do – like I was told there were 3 guys on that O-line that had – like if that was a practice day Saturday, it was far worse than anything they did in camp. All 3 of them. That's first game stuff. I don't want to go back into it. We'll talk about it with the McKinneys. But, yeah, A-Chain needs to get going. But here's what I want to talk about. You know, we were talking yesterday, that Carolina defense. Is it one of the worst in college football? And they had them held to 21, like you said, 2021 through 3 quarters. Is that one of the worst defenses we'll ever see? They gave up like 5-point-something yards per play to who was it? It was not Florida A&M. Was it Florida A&M or was it North Carolina A&T? It was somebody really bad in that opener. That was the game where the guys, they almost didn't go play.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And then they ended up playing, and without several offensive players, multiple key offensive players, they averaged well over 5 yards a play against Carolina. Now, the next week,
Florida A&M,
FAMU. The next week, FAMU played Jackson State. With those guys back, averaged like 2.8 yards a play. They averaged damn near or barely more than half what they averaged against North Carolina without their key players.
Yep.
Well, the question is, how bad is North Carolina's defense? And I think the question we need to find out tomorrow is, how bad is App State's defense? Because Carolina didn't need a 40-point fourth quarter to get to 60 without Joshua Downs, with a new quarterback. So, I mean, yes, A&M needs to – and by the way, they had a new O-line coach as well, Carolina. Because Stacy Searles, who's their O-line coach last year, is at Georgia now, is a guy that A&M, I would say he was the runner-up to Adazio. If they didn't land Adazio, they would have gotten Searles, who is now at Georgia, who's at Carolina. So,
well, but you think the game might be closer than people think?
I do, and
Billy,
nobody else does.
You're right, nobody else does.
Let me tell you something. I'm going to pick them.
Negative
I'm going to pick them
Nancy.
to cover, and I think Alabama's going to win.
What is the spread? Hold on.
20.
Billy, they're not going to cover that.
Okay,
They're not
I hope they don't. I just
It's a
think
big spread.
I just think
At home.
I am.
And it is Texas.
I'm a little maybe jaded from what I saw from Bama last year, and I'm probably making a mistake by forgetting that Nick Saban
I was about to say
humiliates teams that they're supposed to be competitive with. I don't care if it's USC, if it's Michigan, if it's Ole Miss. It's been A&M's been on the receiving end of that. Georgia's been on the on their way up. Cincinnati last year in the playoffs, Michigan State in the playoffs. That's what he's done his whole career.
And you don't think this whole offseason he was going.
But last year he didn't, and 5 of their 8 SEC games were decided in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. And they lost those great receivers.
And that line still sucks.
But the question is, how mediocre is Texas? And that's
more mediocre than we all think.
Probably.
Well, I hope you're right, Seth, but I'm with Liucci in the fact that I think it'll be closer than people think, because it is the biggest home game they've probably had in 10 years.
Can we cancel this show and just start over?
Dude,
all this
they're going to
Texas love.
Well, we just made our pick. Let's go ahead and make it our pick.
All right, Alabama's covering.
You got Alabama covering?
No, Alabama's going to cover, yeah.
I think Texas is going to cover.
I'm taking Texas. I take Alabama
17.
to win. I take Alabama to win 43-24 and win by 19. I think they're going to win comfortable, but 20 is a lot. 20 is a lot.
Fine.
What if Texas were to find a way? What if? What's the conversation?
Well, you would never hear the end of it. I don't even want to discuss that.
Can we just talk about that next week? If it happens?
It's hard to envision.
I don't think
it's hard to see that happening.
It's hard, but I mean, look,
anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
Did anyone think we were going to cover last year?
I will say this: if Texas did beat Bama, it would be so huge for them. But also, I think it would mean that Bama may end up for the first time in recent memory being a 3-loss football team.
Yeah.
It would.
But I don't think it's happening.
Yeah,
I just think Texas is gonna. I think Sarkisian probably knows the weaknesses of that defense better than anybody. And there aren't many, but he probably knows what. And I don't trust Bama's DC very much, Golding, to be honest with you. I don't think Nick Saban does. Now,
all right, that's going to do it here for TexAgs Rewind. I appreciate everybody watching and, commenting, whatever you do. If you shared it, liked it. Just do all the things that we ask you to do always. And at this point, I still have not seen the movie Maverick. I know there's a lot of people asking about it. I hope to have said I've watched it by next week. Can't guarantee it, but if I do, will you care? Probably not. See you next time.